Welcome back. Thanks very much for staying with us here on SABC News. It was on this day in 2013 that expelled ANC Youth League President Julius Malema announced the establishment of a new political party that will be a game changer in the country's political landscape. Today, the economic freedom fighters are celebrating their 9th anniversary with the elderly at the Boikhutso Old Age Home in Bloemfontein. We're now joined via Zoom by political analyst Asanda Nwasheng to weigh in on the EFF's journey since its establishment on the 26th of July 2013. Asanda, great pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks very much for being here.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me.
Most welcome. 9 years on, and, obviously the EFF has made some gains, being one of the main opposition parties. What can we say when it comes to what the EFF has done, in terms of the difference that they've made since their inception 9 years ago?
I think that it's important to always recognize the EFF as one of the first black opposition parties that really did give the ANC a run for its money. And I think that particularly in the early years, many people felt like they represented the voices of black people, that they articulated the pain of black people and the hangover and legacy of apartheid. And in particular, because they stayed with the issue of land and the need to repossess, reclaim land and the need for reparations, a lot of people felt an affiliation with them. And I think it's important to kind of highlight that, because that is important from a historic perspective, despite where they are at the present moment.
I want to talk about what you reflected on, the fact that they were, the only black party that really posed a serious challenge to the ruling ANC up to now. I mean, we've seen parties like COPE, we've seen parties like Agang that have come and gone. And in the beginning, there was excitement around them, and certainly people who were planning to vote for those parties. But we obviously know what then transpired. What can we attribute to what we can call, I suppose, the success of the EFF in maintaining that? What has been the key issue that has really made them that party?
I think that the one important strategy that the EFF has is that it seems to have a knack for tapping into youth struggles. They understand the issues that are most important to young people, and in particular, poor black young people, and just generally have an understanding of black people's issues that are often ignored in this country. And they also seem to have a knack for being able to speak truth to power in ways that are unafraid, and in ways that challenge without fear whoever is in power at that specific moment, which is something that a lot of political parties don't often do. There's a lot of respectability politics in a lot of political parties. There's a lot of, kind of pandering to old notions of respect, and not saying things the way that they are, and not challenging as much as one needs to in South African politics.
Let me go back to your opening statement. Well, when we started our conversation, you started by talking about, what the EFF promised, what they said that they would deliver on, and they really spoke about the issue of land. There's certainly been, one of the major issues for black people in this country. But one must then ask the question, from talking about it and raising the issue, where are we now? Obviously, the EFF is not in power. They are one of the opposition parties. But, I'd really, would we see a point where there is actual gain when it comes to the issue of land for the majority?
I think that, with these issues, sometimes it's not even so much a matter of needing to see overall change. So it's not always about seeing legislation change per se, but it's about the fact that the issue continues to be top of mind because they continue to speak about it and they continue to agitate for it. And I think that, the good thing that they have done is to challenge South Africans to rethink issues of land, to challenge South Africans to engage differently with the issue of land, and to constantly remind us that the land that a lot of people are sitting on was stolen, and that there does need to have a conversation about that, because if that conversation doesn't happen, then we will forever be, you know, people who are operating in ways that are ahistorical and in ways that are not just and are not seeking to redress the issues of the past and the discrimination of the past and the marginalization of Black people. Because without land, Black people continue to be homeless, and without land, Black people continue to be unable to use such an important asset class to be able to enable their own development, which is not the case for other races in South Africa who were allowed to own land and who were not removed, or were not removed in the same numbers and the same frequency as Black people were.
All right, where do you see the EFF? I mean, you know, the 9 years even from now, let's just say. I mean, do you see a situation where the EFF does indeed take power, does indeed actually progress and actually bring about that change that they've been talking about, particularly when we're talking about the issue of land? Is that a possibility in this country?
No, I mean, I think that Julius Malema has a vision of being the president at some stage. I don't think it's ever going to happen. I think he will forever be an opposition politician. And the reason for that is because Julius Malema is not consistent. So as a politician, you need to be consistent in terms of issues. So while he's consistent on things like land and he's consistent on kind of highlighting the issues of Black people, he doesn't always get it right. And so if we look at the current sentiment around immigration and the need to regulate immigration, he took a stance that a lot of people don't agree with, which is that of Pan-Africanism, and even went to a point where a lot of South Africans felt like he was even negating what it is that they were calling for around regulation, making statements like Zimbabweans and people from the SADC region must just come to South Africa even if it's illegal, which is something that has put him on the back foot and has led to a lot of people even saying that they no longer support the party because they don't see the party to be aligned with what South Africans want at this particular moment. And I think also it's important to also be reminded that, you know, Julius Malema has been the leader of this political party for these 9 years and is likely to be the leader for many years after that, which is a problem for democracy because democracy needs leadership that changes. And Julius Malema himself flip-flops. And so at one stage, he wasn't a fan of Thabo Mbeki, and then Jacob Zuma came into power, and suddenly he was a fan of Thabo Mbeki, not a fan of of Jacob Zuma. And then at one stage, he seemed to, I mean, he's always kind of been against Cyril Ramaphosa, particularly around the issue of Marikana, but he has escalated that. And what's been interesting is not that he's just escalated that, but that now he seems to be moving closer to Jacob Zuma, which is a contradiction because his own party went to the Constitutional Court to force Jacob Zuma to pay back the money that was used for Nkandla. And so the question now is, how can you go as far as court and, leading a court case saying Jacob Zuma must pay back the money from Nkandla and then go and have tea with the same man in this very Nkandla that he still has not paid for? So those are the things that keep standing in the way of the EFF, and the fact that they claim to be against corruption, but they constantly are named, whether you're looking at VBS and that scandal and what happened with VBS, they still haven't they haven't gone to jail or even been properly charged or taken to account for how Julius Malema got money for the Ratanang Trust, for the incomplete bridges that they left in Limpopo, and the fact that at the end of the Julius Malema era of power in Limpopo, there was a lot of money that was stolen, such that the province had to be placed under administration. And so there's always this lingering feeling that the EFF was, yes, an important political party, but also that it was a way to protect Julius Malema from ever facing any charges, because to this day, he still hasn't faced charges properly for any of the things that he has been accused of doing from a corruption perspective. And these are the things that kind of lead to people who otherwise would openly support him not being able to openly support him, because he says he stands for corruption and yet he hasn't accounted for corruption. He was against Jacob Zuma and went as far as court, but then now he seems to be back in the good books of Jacob Zuma. And so these are the questions and these are the issues that make it difficult for the EFF to grow beyond its current base. And we know that, various EFF branches across the country have called. In fact, the Eastern Cape very clearly at some stage called for his resignation, saying he was ruining the EFF and leading to them not being able to get the kind of votes that they could get, because when people look at him in his LV and his LV belts and his lifestyle, they feel like he speaks right, he speaks left, but he actually acts in a way that is different from what he says. Right. And those are the issues that will continue to stand in the way of the EFF and thwart any chances that he had of potentially becoming the president of South Africa.
Sanda, many thanks. Thanks very much for giving us your input then this afternoon here on SABC News. That's Sanda Ngwashing weighing in on EFF's journey since its establishment on this day in 2013.